Hello and welcome to the dearie me. Ashwin he's obviously been watching what was it? Bill, no, it wasn't Bill and Ted's, it was the other one.
Wayne's World.
Wayne's World, where they went where they did that. Anyway,
My timing was like it was on point.
On point. There we go. So welcome to Lockdown Biz, folks, to help you entertain and try and keep you sane during the lockdown that's happening. Obviously, I'm not actually in Auckland, I'm in Waihi, but I'm here to support those of you guys in Auckland who are doing it tough. And thank you for doing it and behaving yourselves, folks. Numbers slightly up today, but still 23 when you compare that to the hundreds and thousands we see in other countries is a good job. So thanks, folks, and keep up the good work and keep following the old rules. We've got 50 seconds until I can open up my can of beer, which is I've got another Tui, nearly out of my Tuis. So if you want to throw in the live chat there, what beer should I get next? We are looking for boxes of 12 at around about the $20 mark. So cheap beers, folks. On that one, yes, but money is tight. Some of the things we'll have to chat about. Obviously, the Pumas have announced their lineup for Sunday tomorrow. We've got some news about sevens in the USA, some more news on Whitelock and Moanga. Reese has also come out and had a bit of a chat, so we'll talk about that one. The World 12s, a bit more news on that one, and we also got some sad news about the passing of Michael Pullman, which we'll talk about as well. So 10 seconds until you can open those beers, folks, because look, you can't be drinking before 5, otherwise it'll all kick off at 9 o'clock in the morning, and boy, oh boy, things would get messy then in lockdown, wouldn't they? And there we go, 5 o'clock. Oops, dear me, splashed all over the place there, a bit too eager. Opening that one. How you doing, Ashwin?
All right, I'm all right. It's just like it's at the end of the day, it's always midday somewhere in the world, so it's never too early.
Well, that's true.
If you're gonna pour it on your wheat bix, go ahead. I'm not going to judge you.
And hey, if you pour it like me, it's with the creamy top, then you can probably do it on your wheat bix like milk.
It's scoop of ice cream in there.
I like a flake personally. There we go. And one of the things that I educated my girls on yesterday was they had a chat with my mum, and she mentioned a finger of fudge. Did you have Cadbury's fingers of fudge here in New Zealand?
I think we did.
And but the song used to go, "A finger of fudge is just enough to give your kids a treat. It's full of Cadbury's goodness and really nice to eat." Oh, it is full. Anyway, so yeah, I talk more about that on that one. Afternoon, Stephen. How are you doing with lockdown?
Yeah, very good. Thank you, Paul. Very good. Very chilled out day.
Yep, and we've seen. I'm not sure Stephen's even made out of his bed. If we can see, he's in his bedroom there. Oh, dear me. Anyway, sorry, but we're going to start off with some sad news about the passing of Mike Pullman, somebody that was that came on the shows on this channel in the early days, and then got more successful and had less time. Basically, he got too busy writing. Probably some of you might have read his stuff in, I think it was on Stuff or Herald, one of those two, plus also Rugby Pass, etc. Someone I used to have coffee with in Hamilton and also bump into at the in the media rooms at the Waikato Rugby. So really sad news that he has passed away. A man who was passionate about his rugby and his provincial rugby and getting it all out there. So thoughts with Jessica, his partner, and his family. And we'll definitely miss him at the Waikato games and where I'll be on Friday. I'm sure we'll be having a few words and remembering him at the game when the Bunnings NPC kicks off again. Thanks for all the kind words that we've had on my posts about that in both Facebook and Twitter. It shows that he was, not someone that everyone knew necessarily, but someone that respected his kind of comments, even if you didn't always agree with his comments on the old socials. So tomorrow, folks, we have the what do you call it? One blank now. The Rugby Championship. Yeah, rugby at 7 o'clock, and as Ashwin says, it's taking forever to get there, and probably even more so for you guys who are in lockdown than it is for me. Sorry, just on my other screen. I'm amazed at how many adverts of Book About You going on because we're in lockdown. It just seems nuts. The Argentina, so the Pumas have announced their squad Nicholas obviously got Sanchez there at 10 running things. Julian Montoya now is the what do you call it? I've gone blank. It's the captain and hooker taking over from Creevy, and etc. Aaron's asking why is it on Sundays? It's not on Sundays. Only this round's on Sunday. The next 3 weight rounds are on Saturday, and I think it's about coming out of MIQ for the Springboks and Pumas as to amount of time they've had out of there for training, and obviously the game last weekend was on a Sunday in Perth, and they've had to fly over as well. So I also don't know about stadium availability, but yeah, I think it's not regularly on Sunday. It's just the first round that is. A couple of new props in there as well, but a lot of names there that we recognise. Delgi, De La Fuente, Cordero in the backs. You've got Petty, Medrano, Montoya, Kramer, in all in the forwards. What are your thoughts on the squad, boys?
I'm actually, when I went and had a look at it, I was actually quite surprised. It looks, the names that you see there for the Argentinian side, it's actually, you recognise them. They've been around for a while. So, I mean, like after yesterday's conversation, it's not a walk in the park for the All Blacks, but, I think what we saw happen after last year's loss, you expect to see that continue, as that loss would have still been motivation this year as well. But looks like a pretty strong Argentinian side on paper.
Absolutely. I mean, when you've got players like Lavanini on the bench and Buffelli on the bench, there's also some depth there as well. So yeah, decent side from Argentina. I think they've had probably the hardest build up to the Rugby Championship, having played games in Georgia, I think it was, and then Wales, and then over here. So then in South Africa, and now in Australia. So they've had an even tougher one than I think the other sides. So let's good luck to them, and hope they're competitive, because they haven't been so competitive in their first 2 games against the Springboks. Unfortunately, they perhaps are disappointed a little bit in those games.
Again, it's just sort of like something we talked about yesterday, wasn't it? Very hard to gauge where these teams are at the moment, and tomorrow's the start of actually starting to get a better gauge on where the teams are at and who's strong and who's not, or who's where basically at the end of the day where the teams are at.
Yep, absolutely. Stephen, any thoughts?
Oh, not really. Not a lot to add there. It's just a little bit of an unexpected with the Argentinians, but surely they've got to improve after those 2 performances against the South Africans, when they were pretty much just really at the end of the day shot out, just basically shut down, should I say, but really didn't play a lot of rugby in those tests either, and ultimately paid the price.
Yep. The Whitelock and Mo'unga. So I mean, we all thought that Whitelock was flying out today to Queensland, but it appears that they couldn't get an MIQ slot for him, and therefore they can only get it for Tuesday, which would mean he would come out with about 3 days to spare before the second test match against the Springboks, and that wasn't enough for someone in the forwards to basically get prepared and up to speed for that game. Richard Mo'unga, though, they've decided, as he's back, and as you guys said yesterday when I was talking about Bowden Barrett not being able to play every game back to back, that it's not the 10 jersey isn't as contact heavy, and therefore what do you got? I've got blank now, and therefore Richard Mo'unga can come out of quarantine in that short period and play in that game. Still seems like a bit of a turnaround, a bit of a rush really to get Mo'unga out there, but happy that Richie's on his way, Ashwin.
Oh, look, at the end of the day, I mean, it's always good to see them out there, and if they've got the opportunity to put out a stronger team or more competition within the squad, it's all good. The thing with the Whitelock was a bizarre decision, to tell you the truth, in the first place. Even if they had got the MIQ slot that they wanted, he would have had less than a week. I think it was still only about 4 or 5 days of out of quarantine to go out and play a test match against the Springboks. crazy. That's just asking for injuries to happen, basically. That sort of setup.
I'm not sure if he's going to be. Do we expect to see him running around for Canterbury to get some game time in, Stephen?
Oh, absolutely, far out. If he's part of that Canterbury squad, yeah, you'd be all over him, and I'm sure he'd still want to get some rugby in. Given that they've got after this rugby championship, they've got a end of season tour. I suppose the only real concerning thing for Foster and his group is they really wouldn't want another injury to a lock at the moment. Already with Tuipulotu having not played, boy, that will kind of leave them with just two fit locks, if I'm correct, and Barrett and Barrett and that gives them three. Barrett,
three.
Tupou, beg your pardon, but another injury, you kind of might be looking sideways, especially with the workload that you're going to have over the next 4 weeks.
Hey, Stephen, what do you reckon? The other thing was that I reckon with Tuipulotu, it's actually, he's not someone that comes in and usually off the bat, after an injury layout and goes banging straight into it. He does find that it takes him a couple of games to sort of wind up into it. I'm talking, maybe it's a Super Rugby level thing. Maybe it won't happen at Test match level, but it's something that I've noticed, that he is someone that takes him a couple of games to wind into it.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of attrition for not just the All Blacks, but all four of these teams involved over the next few weeks or so. With Tuipulotu, I believe he has to start next week. If he's good and ready, I think you've got to get him out there, and you've got to basically be getting him playing rugby. On saying all that, I do like the combination of Scott Barrett and Brodie Retallick. They're both basically physical. I actually think Scott Barrett is just a little bit more physical than what Sam Whitelock, even though they're going to lose a little bit of experience there. I think he's very physical. Something that just did cross my mind. I wonder if Geordie Parrott's ever played at lock.
He's as tall as Scott, isn't he? He's as tall as Scott.
Dearie me. So but he's a bit lighter, so it'd be good for lifting the line out, but maybe not enough grunt at the scrum time.
Yeah, just don't get those legs up in the air when you're going up in the air. That's
it. Dearie me. So it'll be it'll be interesting to see that one. You query Patrick Tuipulotu is a concern for me. That one. AK says should have taken Tom Robinson. Covers blindside and lock. Unfortunately, he's injured and had concussion issues, so he wasn't available to go. To be honest with you, and also, again, I would have. He to me is very much a 6 rather than a lock. I think they just got a bit unlucky with Patrick's injury. Not sure it's kept him out for 2 weeks now. I'm sure they would have wanted him to have played this week, but clearly it's starting to become a bit of a concern. I think, and I expect VI to start next weekend because you can't keep Retallick and Scott Barrett, both of them, starting every week. That's in the locks, I don't think.
Hey, just on that, I mean, so we've basically talked about, you've got 5 locks there. Outside of those 5 locks, who have we got that they're looking at? Now, I know you're a big fan of Pari Parkinson, but not so much of who we're fans of, but more of the fact of who do you think they're looking at outside of the 5 locks that we've got at the moment?
Who's been in there? Quinton Strange, I think, down at has been in there. Has been in the squad once.
I was going to say, for me, Pari Parkinson stands out as probably a real clear contender. I don't know if they'd go back to somebody who's probably a bit long in the tooth, like a Luke Romano. He's a former All Black himself. He'll bring you a certain style of game. So I think you can pretty much put a line through his name. I know Josh Dixon. Josh Dixon was a guy from the Highlanders that seemed to come out on the radar. But for me, Pari Parkinson is the obvious choice.
Has he been involved with the All Black squad at all, though? I can't remember. I mean, like, I know Paul mentioned. Oh God, mine's gone blank on the name you just mentioned before.
Quinton Strange.
Quinton Strange. I know that he got dragged into a All Blacks camp. I think in leading up into a test, but I can't remember Pari Parkinson actually being involved in a sort of build-up squad or even a camp. I don't disagree with you, Pari, that Pari Parkinson's quite an exciting prospect in the black jersey, but that's why I asked the question in the way that I did, and that, who are the All Black selectors looking at? Because I can't remember him actually being in one of those in the All Black environment, let's call it.
Yeah. I was going to say, if you wanted to look at somebody who ticks a lot of boxes and is a good line out forward, good on other people's ball is Scott Scrafton. I think he's a very, very good,
underrated, isn't he?
Good. He's a very underrated type footballer. But for me, Pari Parkinson has got some really good strings to his bow. He's a really, really good carrier of the ball. He's incredibly strong as well. He holds players up. So, those are a couple of things you actually need against much bigger teams.
Now, I'm happy to be disproved, but I'd say Scott Scrafton's a Super Rugby player, not an international player. I wouldn't side. I don't. Yeah, to me, the Mitch Dunshea is another one that I think that they might have looked at again, but I think it looks like he's out injured as well. So, but those are the kind of names that I would think that they've had a look at from memory. Good afternoon to a Shaggy John. How you doing, sir?
What, John?
A Shaggy.
Yeah, just a little bit.
Could do with a bit of perhaps do a little. Actually, you're looking a bit like who's the assistant coach for the Brumbies, who wears a hat like mine, a bit like mine, a lot.
Oh no! You need to find somebody really good looking if you're going to compare him to me.
Well, given I was about to say, given John's situated down at Middle Earth, more like Gandalf, I think.
Who am I thinking of? I've just gone blank.
I don't know. Who are you thinking of?
I will look that up. But have you seen Sevu Reese's comments that he's been working on his defence? That he sees that as an area he could improve, and having seen his shoulder-led tackles in the past, I think it's a good move that he's been looking at that area of his game.
I hadn't really thought about his tackling efforts, actually. Yeah. We've talked about the fact that he is we've talked about the fact that he liability as a defensive player, but every time we seem to say that, and then the next game he plays, he seems to do pretty well defensively. So, I don't know.
So Laurie Fisher's the person I'm thinking of.
Oh, needs a bucket hat. Needs to borrow your bucket hat then.
Absolutely. That's so that's who I was thinking of. But it's those are perhaps not. I'm trying to find one that's a bit more fetching rather than that John won't get too upset about me doing it for.
When have we been worried about upsetting John?
Well, hey.
That's never been the case, surely.
Exactly.
Right. It's you've got to say it's uncanny when if you look at I think that looks like the John's John could pass for Laurie Fisher at the moment.
I think you're doing him a disservice, to be honest. I think John's much
Laurie
better
Fisher
looking
or John?
than Laurie Fisher.
What are you trying to get a Christmas card out of him, Steve?
That's white hair. This is what we call ash blonde.
But this is ash blonde. That's ash blonde here.
No, that's Ashwin.
Dearie me. Yeah, so that's interesting. So he's been working on his defensive game. I do worry whenever he says the word big hits, because I say I've seen him lead with his shoulder a bit too much in the past. But let's hope that that he keeps that under control. On that side of things, but he said, look, he's been working on his defence. It's been really interesting to see how he goes tomorrow. With that, since he's been focusing on that side of things. The World 12s. Gareth Davis has given a bit of an interview in the BBC about this one, where he says they've already had approaches from individuals and corporates interested in having franchises and some sponsors as well. Admittedly, he says with fairly scant details. Really. And then he goes and says, "Look, I'm not getting involved in any sort of rebel or ambush of the game." Really? There's been a massive PR push over the past week. If you're not getting involved in some sort of ambush or rebel thing, then you go through the right channels, don't you, Ashwin?
Oh, look, I mean, there's a few things to unpackage there, because that's the terminology we use these days, unpackaging things. So there's a few things to unpackage there. The first one is the fact is the sponsorship. Look, I think globally there's a lot of large companies are looking to sponsor things. And so there's money available out there for your sport if you want it, but it doesn't mean you're going to get it just like that automatically. You still have to sell the case of the benefits to those companies that want to provide sponsorship. So yeah, the fact that he's saying, oh, there's companies lining up to be sponsors, I'm not surprised about that. But they still have to put the case forward and build it. I'm not surprised that there's owners that want to put a team together. For some reason, people with lots of money like having sports teams to throw money at for no return on investment. So I mean, there's no surprises there either. But look, yeah, as you say, I mean, realistically speaking, if you were looking to do this competition upfront, transparent, open and transparent, as the New Zealand terminology goes, obviously they're being as open and transparent as our government is. So basically, there's no way that they have been. They've hidden it from World Rugby and then gone out and announced it.
I was also by the Ashwin means they've been totally transparent and open. But anyway, we'll leave his political views to one side. Look, to me, and he says they have been involved with, they had talked to World Rugby, but because they had to have confidentiality agreements in place, they only talked to one person. The non-disclosure agreements that no one else could know about it. And then he goes on to say, but we've had good response, or had interesting responses from unions. You're like, hang on a second, you either can talk to lots of people or you can't. But apparently you've done both. But it all just seems a bit dubious to me.
Well, the other thing that's surprising is the number of people that are involved in that 12s bid that have had have been involved with World Rugby at the highest level, or coach likes of Steve Hansen or whatever. I think you said Jake White the other day as well, that have been so it's quite weird. I mean, like that the amount of people that have been involved at the highest level of rugby that are behind this, and it's successfully as well, you could say.
And look, this isn't something that's been dreamt up by Gareth Davis or Steve Chew. Let's be honest. Somebody's dreamt this up and then gone, okay, what are the kind of names we need, or people we need involved, so it's got credibility, and then they've gone and got them. There's nothing so far as to say who these mysterious people behind the scenes are. So it'd be interesting to know who is actually really trying to organise this. But it's been a very well managed PR launch, at the very least, because we've had, as you say, Steve Hansen's involved. He's done 2 or 3 interviews, pretty high-level interviews. Gareth Davis has done some high-level interviews, and there's been so it's they know what they're doing.
You've hit the nail on the head, sort of thing. And the fact is that they're actually been quite well organised behind the scenes. They've got some really big names in the game as part of the early sort of like, here's our game. It's not like we're going, who? this will never take off because you don't even know the people that are talking to it. So there've obviously been quite a lot of work going on behind the scenes before they've even come out and said, "Here we are."
Oh, and not only that, but they've also gone, okay, Steve, you talk on Tuesday and Wednesday. Gareth, that will have died down by Friday. So you're interview on Friday, and so it's been very well managed as to who talks when to keep it in the news cycle as well, which is the other big thing as well about it, which you see various other launches totally fail at. I'm not talking about you, Super Rugby, honest, and Sums are. No, of course not. John, your thoughts on this Super 12? I think you've talked about it before.
I think it's really interesting. It seems to be that there's a plan not just about the Super 12, but about driving World Rugby into one season, because they're pitching it right in the break of the Northern Hemisphere season, but right when the Rugby Championship is due to be held. And one of the things that hasn't been factored into South Africa being given the show from Super Rugby is them having to join the Northern Hemisphere League in order to survive means that South African rugby has is in the process of changing rugby season. So where once upon a time there was some kind of argument when it came to an international season, that the most logical way to do it would be to do it in the Northern Hemisphere summer, because the conditions would be best for the Northern Hemisphere teams where most of the world rugby players are, and so it would be the best conditions for the best rugby. Now you are left with these two lone nations in the bottom of the Southern Pacific that are playing rugby out of sync with the rest of the world. And so I can't see how it will continue over time much longer before New Zealand and Australia will start having to look very seriously at lining up their seasons, because their players will want some money. Their players will definitely want a bite of some of that money. And the only way they're going to get it is if they are released and are able to play both the Rugby Championship and that Super 12. If it comes off, and that means shifting their season somehow to bring it into line with that gap.
The Major League Rugby is within the same window as Super Rugby. So the USA, and I know they're not big hitters, but they potentially are future big hitters. Are running on the same calendar as as New Zealand and Australia.
Well, you see, that again makes so much sense, because from a conditions perspective, there's parts of the United States which are like frozen tundra during winter. So it makes absolute sense to play it in summer. They also don't compete with American football and the NFL. So again, makes a huge amount of sense. The same thing, if you played it in the European summer, your major competitor, at least in the British, the British Isles, would be cricket rather than football, and you would have better conditions. But we know that rugby for many years. Well, has rugby ever been run on logic and smart thinking? I'm not 100%.
But you're missing one big point. You're missing one big point. Is the fact is that you can't play rugby in the summer down here. You might get away with it in certain parts of New Zealand, but we talk about player welfare. You'll kill the players playing in the summer in Australia. It simply can't happen. You imagine a game of rugby in Queensland in summer is just illogical. You go to Melbourne, even Melbourne hits not just a day like London might, but they'll hit weeks on weeks of 40-degree temperatures. How the hell is a player supposed to run out in 40-degree heat, even at night? So they'll get scores of thousands of people going down to their beaches overnight in Melbourne even, because the temperatures are 40 degrees at night. How do you do that? Do you play in an air-conditioned stadium?
Gentlemen, I lived in Durban for 45 years, and Durban's highest temperatures are recorded in February, comfortably.
Yep.
And Super 12 the Super Rugby season was starting on February the 9th. They were playing games, right? February 9th, February 12th.
Yep.
That's the first win. Yep. That's why it was always a disadvantage for the Sharks to start the season playing a number of games at home, contrary to any other team who could get a good run on in the first few games by starting at home. The Sharks would be at a disadvantage because Durban is the equivalent of Brisbane in terms of climate.
Well, it
And so
depends
the
who they
ball-
ended up playing, mate. That's a crock of the proverbial. It depends who they end up playing. If they end up
Can I give you
playing the
time?
Highlanders, if they end up playing the Highlanders in their first game at home, they've just been acclimatized for 2 months in their own situation. Highlanders fly over, and remember, they come over a week before. They don't come over 2 weeks before like a test team might, or back in the day they used to. They come over a week before, and they're going to be playing in 40-degree heat. It's built for them to win.
But those games never, or very rarely, early season Durban games very rarely picks up try bonus points because the players are too knackered. But I think what that does show us though is that administrators will still make players play in stupid conditions, whatever it's money to make the money happen.
What we're talking about is that if you've got 1 or 2 games happening in heat, and we have seen it. I'm not saying we haven't seen it. And we've had special circumstances where they go and have extra breaks and blah, blah, blah. But it's 1 or 2 games. Now you're saying that possibly you're going to be playing a season in those sorts of conditions, and those players aren't going to be able to do that week in, week out. It's not going to happen. You do it for a couple of weeks, but you're not going to do it for 2 months.
Well, we'll have to. I know this is one of those ones we have to wait and see as to what happens. But John is right in the fact that more of the decision makers, by moving South Africa into a European season, are now working under that regime. So when it comes to a vote, it's 2 more or 2 or whatever, however the voting works. Votes it's extra votes that way, suggesting that the global season should just match the European season. So we'll just have to wait and see how that all pans out. But it's not looking good for player welfare.
Look, I mean, in terms of way the global rugby, let's call it, in terms of the numbers stack up, I'm not arguing that. That physically, you just can't do it. Physically, Australia can't play in summer for 3 months effectively. Let's face it. We've got to remember, we've got to chuck in global warming so the temperatures aren't going backwards.
I say it'll be interesting to see what happens. Whether if the Rugby Championship gets moved to the Six Nations window, for example, so February March time, March April time, to open up this window in August for this competition, then what would that do to the things like the NPC and Super Rugby, etc. Would be a big spanner in the works as to how the hell you would fit it all in. To me, the obvious way to do a global season is pretty much what the Southern Hemisphere has got, which is say the first 6 months of the year are club rugby or franchise, whatever you want to call it, and the second half of the year is international rugby, which is effectively what we've got in New Zealand and Australia. And then you just go, half a year, there you go, folks. Non-internationals can play in the second half of the year in whatever competition you want to play in, but you won't have your internationals available. And to me, that's the sensible way of structuring a season. But I can't see the North ever agreeing to that personally.
NPC doesn't. I mean, NPC is not a big thing. Tell you the truth, NPC can carry on as it is. I don't think it's a massive thing because you don't have the All Blacks playing it. Even fringe All Blacks don't play in the NPC or bugger all. So I don't think that needs to be. And it can be sort of taken out of the mix if you're looking at trying to make things happen. But the rest of it's still interesting how you fit it in.
Well, but if you move, so what I'm saying is, if you move, say, the Rugby Championship to the Six Nations window, then you might be playing Super Rugby from, say, April through to August, or something like that. And in which case, where do you fit the NPC when suddenly? No,
but that's what I'm saying. Is that actually it still works because you can slightly shuffle NPC. It's not an issue. And the reality is if you look at the start dates for NPC at the moment, it is actually in August anyway. So if Super Rugby, you wouldn't have the break like at the moment, you have a bit of a break between Super Rugby and NPC. You'd basically have
Yep.
Super Rugby finishing, and a week or two later, NPC kicks off. It might actually work well for actual club rugby in the true sense of the New Zealand word anyway, club rugby. And the fact is that they don't have to try and rush and finish their season in the middle of winter. It can actually roll on a bit longer because NPC is going to start later as well.
Yeah, who knows what the implications are for all of this, but we'll wait and see. We're kind of overrunning, but a little bit. But I just want to have a quick nod to sevens. And I've never understood how you can put together a domestic sevens series that is somehow financially viable. For 15s, I get it. You have your own stadium, you have regular games there, you can make money from your stadium, etc. And I can see how you can build a fan base and that you can somehow come up with a financial model that works. For sevens, where all the teams play in one place for a weekend and then move to another place, I just don't see how you build a fan base per team when you have no location that they call home.
Depends. It depends on what the teams are based on. I think it can't. If we did it in the New Zealand sense in the provincial sides and that, you still get people that'll follow that and come along, and it's a bit of a festival or whatever, and it's only one weekend in a year, so you'll go along to it. Might work. At the end of the day, we know the reality is they don't really care about the crowd in the stadium, though, do they? It's about what dollars they can get by getting a TV deal out of it, and then sponsorship on the back of that.
Yeah, but again, people watch the TV because it's their team, even if it's away, kind of thing. We'll see. But the Premier Rugby Sevens is being launched in the USA this Sunday. They've got open trials for experienced athletes for their first championship event on the 9th of October. We'll see how that one pans out. And I say that's their first. The idea then is that they will have a sort of 6 or 7 stop series in the USA, but they're just doing with one stop this year as to kick themselves off. So. And they've also got a couple of what they call talent transfer programs. So basically, athletes who've got no rugby experience at all. They've got a couple of tryouts for those as well in Charlotte and Memphis. Memphis looks like it's going to be the base of things initially. But I'm going to keep an eye on that one. As I say, I don't get. Financially, it doesn't need to make sense in the same way that 15s does. But we'll see how we'll see how that one pans out.
I've actually always thought it's just like be interesting to see if they could actually get a sevens circuit internally within New Zealand. It's just like because you have the Queenstown Sevens, and it's sort of thing. It's a once-off, and you got, and we know sevens can be a bounce of the ball or a call here or a call there. It really does. A call in sevens, I think, makes more of an impact than even in 15s, and so it's just like it's a one-off, and it's just like I always thought it's just like you could still have your like we do with the global event with the Hong Kong Sevens still being sort of held up as sort of almost like a pinnacle type thing. You could still have the National Sevens tournament, which I think is held in Rotorua currently, and then have some weekly tournaments around the country that everybody, bit of a circus that travels around New Zealand, especially if we're not going to open our borders to the world.
It's that would be interesting. That would be interesting to see whether it's like I think Queens. It seems to fit Queenstown perfectly, right? It's a party weekend. It's a party location. Why not?
It was strange when they moved it from there. To be honest,
I think Rotorua is trying to improve itself as that. I mean, with the mountain biking and the other kind of outdoor activities. I think they're trying to grow that kind of the outdoor or the adventure sports side of Rotorua, and people heading there, and so
But
can
the
see
idea is
why,
cool. But the idea is that, I mean, I understand. Let's say you've got your mountain biking and you go to see some mud pool spit and stuff like that. But if you're doing that, you're not there at the ground watching the rugby, then, are you? So it doesn't work. That's why.
I think they're trying to turn themselves in a bit more of a party town in the way that Queensland is. Oh, not Queensland, sorry, Queenstown. But I wouldn't be adverse to a Super Rugby pre-season sevens, where obviously before the internationals come back, a bit like the tens was over in Brisbane. But I think sevens makes more sense than tens for the weekend.
Current tens champions, the Blues. Just saying.
Raining. The word looking for.
Thanks for that segue, Paul. Appreciate that.
Aaron says, could 12s take over from sevens? No, I don't think so. The 12s, they're looking at holding it over 3 weekends to have a kind of tournament rather than a weekend, and I think it's a bit longer than sevens. I could see sevens morphing into tens. I think tens is actually a better idea than 12s or
seven.
Or seven, but as I say, there's already a global tens tournament tens series trying to kick off as well. I wonder how all these different tournaments are all going to get the top players in the world all playing for them all at the same time.
It's marketing. It's called marketing, Paul. Everybody's got the top talent. Our players are better than those ones. We've got the best playing for us.
We'll see. Well, boys, any other final things before we log off?
Yep,
I think we're pretty much there. So so tomorrow, folks, obviously the Rugby Championship is on. I'm probably, unless there's some hard-hitting news that comes out tomorrow morning, we'll skip breaking news. We'll skip the lockdown beers tomorrow because we'll do a post-match reaction to the All Blacks versus the Pumas. So 7 o'clock kickoff, and then the 10 o'clock kickoff for the Wallabies versus the Springboks. So post-match reaction to both of those games straight after the final whistle. Don't forget also, folks, that tonight is the USA versus Canada in the second of the Rugby World Cup qualifiers. The USA needing a big comeback in that one. So we'll probably talk about that on Monday.
I was going to say, if you've got to spare $20, make sure you jump on and watch that.
If you can find it, geez.
Find it and fork out $20
for one game. Yeah, absolutely. Pay-per-view, $20 for a game. Jeez. There we go. So thank you, John. Thank you, Ashwin. Thank you, Stephen, who we lost, who's already having his dinner. And catch you all tomorrow.